So we got two signings at the same time for the Knicks. Derrick Rose is coming back, and they signed Evan Fournier. As a Celtics fan, I would have liked to have had Fournier come back. And for 19 mil a year, which is the average, I believe, you're telling me the Celtics really couldn't give him that? I mean, I know they got the Marcus Smart extension coming up if they're going to hold on to him and stuff, but really, I guess they just really want to hold on to as much cap space as possible, and they just didn't see it for Fournier. For the Knicks' sake, I think Fournier will help in terms of spacing. He can also create some offense himself. You're not going to run everything through him, but if you start him off the ball, have him someone set a screen for him, he's got some momentum going to the rim, and then you've got Mitchell Robinson, Nerlens, who they re-signed, Julius Randle, dive into the rim, whatever it might be. RJ can space the floor because his shooting's been good. It makes sense. And they also brought back Derrick Rose. The deal is 3 years for $43 million. And we'll see if there's any options on that one or whatever. The Knicks, they're definitely making a play for offense. And it makes sense because we saw in the playoffs for them that they just had a really tough time scoring on Atlanta. I mean, they brought two defenders on Julius, and he took some bad jump shots, and they just didn't have enough spacing and enough scoring to overcome that. Derrick Rose was the one guy who could still get into the Hawks' defense and just give them some scoring. And you'd think with RJ getting better next season, and Julius, we'll see if he falls back down to earth a little bit with his contested shot making. But you have to assume that he has turned a leaf as a player and he can still be their best guy. And then you got Derrick Rose who can get into the defense and run the screens and kick out to guys and at least be decent enough for mid-range. And, I mean, his three-point shot hasn't been awful. And, in fact, he did shoot over 40% from three in the regular season for him at least. So you combine that with Fournier, and hopefully the Knicks can get a bit of a boost to their offense next season. I mean, Fournier will improve the spacing. He gives them a ball handler. D. Rose, obviously the ball handling and the shot creation's there for him. RJ's improvement, and you put all that together, yeah, it's not a star. I mean, at one point they were rumored for Chris Paul like a year ago. They were rumored for DeRozan a little bit. I don't know if there's a possibility of that still happening, but maybe now they can be one of the 3 or 4 best defensive teams in the league, and perhaps they can have the, 13th best offense or something if all things go really well and there's some off-ball movement and the offense isn't too sluggish and there's still a good amount of swing offense and all that. Now, all of that said, the goal is for the Knicks to still get a superstar at some point, whether that's trade, free agency, and I mean, this does lock up some of their cap space moving forward. I mean, Nerlens, his was what, $30 million for 3 years or so. There might be an option there. D. Rose and Fournier now, RJ's extension and Julius's extensions, those are going to be kicking in a couple of seasons here. I think for Randall, it's after this upcoming season. So the infamous or whatever Knicks cap space that we've talked about, it's not going to be the same thing kind of shortly here. That doesn't mean they still can't make a move. And, Fournier can be the type of guy in a trade. And, I mean, obviously, you feel good about him for this season, but in the long-term thing, you could look at him as a potential trade guy who he's not going to be the main return for another team if some star wants out, but he could be step one, and then maybe that's other guys moving as well, whether that's Obi. They, of course, still have the Mavericks picks. Again, I don't think this is going to happen this offseason or during the season, but at some point, I imagine that's still the ultimate goal for the Knicks. So, yeah, it's kind of like a win-win scenario because Fournier will either end up playing out his entire contract for the Knicks and being a solid player, or, tools for a bigger trade down the line. As far as where they rank in the Eastern Conference, I mean, you have to hope the Bulls got better with the Lonzo thing. My Celtics with Horford, if he's going to be good, then that's hopefully going to put them at least back into the mid-tier of the East. You have Atlanta. We'll have to see if they fall back down to earth a little bit from the playoff run or if they're now in the upper echelon of the conference. You've got Miami, who certainly got better. So I don't know exactly where the Knicks rank, but I think they did get better this offseason, and that's cool. So hopefully they can continue being the great defensive team, and I do think Fournier can fit into that. Like, yeah, he's not a great individual defender, and maybe that's still a fear, is that they still don't really have, like, one guy who you're going to consider for an all-defense team or whatever. Although RJ, I could picture growing into that. But the team defense can still be great. Fournier can fit into there. They got better on offense. So cool.